British rule in India. A period often romanticized in literature and film. But the reality was far from the idyllic scenes often portrayed. You know, that lighthearted romp where everyone had tea and biscuits while discussing the benefits of colonial rule? The truth is, while British officials enjoyed their tea, the local population was grappling with the harsh realities of colonial exploitation. Just kidding. It was more like a 200-year-long heist, leaving India economically drained, socially fractured, and with a serious case of historical trauma. The British systematically dismantled India's traditional industries, leading to widespread poverty and economic disparity. Buckle up because we're about to unpack how the British East India Company, a corporation with an army, managed to turn one of the world's richest countries into, well, not that. The East India Company started as a trading entity, but soon morphed into a powerful political force, using military might to control vast territories. From the mid-1700s to the mid-1900s, the British Empire cast a long shadow over the Indian subcontinent. They imposed their rule through a combination of military force, political manipulation, and economic exploitation. They weren't there to learn Bollywood dance moves or sample the local cuisine, trust me. Their primary goal was to extract as much wealth as possible, often at the expense of the local population. Nope, they were all about that sweet, sweet profit, consequences be damned. The British established plantations, factories, and trade routes that funneled resources out of India and into the coffers of the British Empire. This wasn't just some minor historical blip, folks. The exploitation was systematic and far-reaching, affecting every aspect of Indian society. From forced labor to heavy taxation, the British left no stone unturned in their quest for profit. We're talking about a period of intense exploitation that left scars still visible today. Famines, often exacerbated by British policies, led to the deaths of millions. The social fabric of India was torn apart, leading to long-lasting divisions and conflicts. Think of it like that one friend who borrows money and conveniently forgets to pay it back, but on a national scale. The British imposed heavy taxes on the Indian population, draining the wealth of the country and leaving it impoverished. Not cool, Britain, not cool. The resentment and dissatisfaction among the Indian population grew, leading to numerous uprisings and movements against British rule. But hey, it's not all doom and gloom. Amidst the oppression and exploitation, a spirit of resistance and resilience emerged. Indian freedom fighters, leaders, and ordinary citizens began to organize and fight back against the colonial powers. The story of British rule in India is also a story of Indian resilience, of tireless resistance, and ultimately, of triumph over adversity. Despite the odds, the Indian people never gave up their fight for freedom and justice. It's a tale worth knowing, so let's dive in. The journey to independence was long and arduous, but it culminated in a moment of triumph and celebration. The legacy of British rule is complex, but the resilience and determination of the Indian people shine through as a testament to their enduring spirit. Now let's talk about the East India Company. Imagine a corporation so powerful that it had its own army and navy. No, this isn't a dystopian sci-fi movie, this was real life. The East India Company, chartered by the British Crown, was basically in the business of making money by any means necessary. And boy did they make money. They started small, trading spices and textiles. But these weren't your average merchants. They were masters of manipulation, exploiting local rivalries and leveraging their growing military might to secure lucrative trade deals. Think of them as that friend who brings a casserole to the potluck but then somehow ends up taking home all the leftovers in your good Tupperware. Except instead of casseroles, they were taking control of entire industries and resources. Their tactics were questionable, to say the least. They played different Indian rulers against each other, instigating conflicts and then conveniently offering their protection in exchange for, you guessed it, more control and more money. By the mid-1800s, the East India Company had gone from a trading company to a de facto ruling power, effectively controlling large swaths of India. This wasn't about fair trade anymore, this was about outright domination. Okay, picture this. India, a land famous for its riches, spices, and exquisite craftsmanship. For centuries, India was known for its vibrant markets, bustling with traders from all over the world, eager to get their hands on the finest spices, textiles, and handcrafted goods. The subcontinent was a treasure trove of natural resources and skilled artisans, making it one of the wealthiest regions on the planet. Now imagine all of that wealth being systematically siphoned off, shipped thousands of miles away, and used to fuel the growth of another country. This wasn't just a one-time heist, it was a meticulously planned and executed operation that spanned over 2 centuries. British ships would arrive at Indian ports, load up with valuable goods, and set sail back to Britain, leaving India poorer with each voyage. That's the basic gist of how Britain treated India economically. The British East India Company initially came as traders but soon took on administrative and military roles, gradually taking control of vast territories. They established a complex bureaucracy to manage their new colony, ensuring that the flow of wealth was always in their favor. The British implemented policies designed to benefit their own industries back home, often at the expense of Indian businesses and farmers. They introduced laws that restricted Indian industries while promoting British goods. Indian textiles, once the envy of the world, were heavily taxed, making them too expensive to compete with British products. Meanwhile, British factories thrived on the raw materials extracted from Indian soil. They imposed heavy taxes, forcing Indians to grow cash crops like cotton and indigo instead of food, leading to shortages, and you guessed it, more profits for British traders. These cash crops were essential for British industries, but they were detrimental to Indian farmers who struggled to feed their families. The British tax system was designed to extract as much revenue as possible, leaving little for the local population. Imagine being told what to grow on your own land, knowing that you'll barely make enough to feed your family while your crops are shipped off to make someone else rich. The British policies left Indian farmers in a perpetual state of poverty and indebtedness. They had no choice but to comply, as resistance often led to severe punishment or even death. Yeah, not exactly a recipe for economic prosperity. The forced cultivation of cash crops led to frequent famines, as food production was neglected. Millions of Indians suffered from malnutrition and starvation, while the British coffers swelled with wealth. The disparity between the colonizers and the colonized grew wider with each passing year. It's like inviting someone over for dinner, making them cook and clean, and then sending them home with the bill. The British officials lived in opulence, enjoying lavish banquets and luxurious lifestyles, all funded by the hard work and suffering of the Indian people. The contrast between the lives of the British elite and the average Indian citizen was stark and heartbreaking. Except in this case, the dinner lasted for 2 centuries. For over 200 years, India was subjected to British exploitation, its resources drained, and its people oppressed. The impact of this prolonged period of colonial rule is still felt in India today, affecting its economy, society, and even its psyche. This systematic economic drain crippled India's once thriving industries, turning the country from a global economic powerhouse into a source of cheap raw materials and labor for the British Empire. Indian artisans and craftsmen found themselves out of work, as their products could no longer compete with the mass-produced goods from British factories. The traditional industries that had sustained Indian society for centuries were decimated. It was exploitation on a grand scale, a textbook example of how not to treat another country. The British colonial rule in India serves as a grim reminder of the devastating effects of imperialism. It wasn't just about economic exploitation, it was about control, domination, and the systematic dismantling of a nation's identity and heritage. The scars of this period are still visible in India, but so is the resilience and spirit of its people who have worked tirelessly to rebuild their nation. Now let's talk about some specific examples of this economic plunder, shall we? The British Empire's exploitation of India is a tale of greed and systematic looting that spanned centuries. Because, believe me, the British weren't shy about taking what they wanted. They came with a sense of entitlement, believing it was their right to extract wealth from the lands they colonized. They treated India like their personal piggy bank, and they weren't afraid to break it open and grab whatever they could get their hands on. This wasn't just opportunistic theft, it was a calculated strategy to enrich the British Empire at the expense of Indian prosperity. We're talking about everything from the Koh-i-Noor diamond, one of the largest and most valuable diamonds in the world, which ended up in the British crown jewels, to countless other precious artifacts and resources. But it wasn't just about jewels and treasures. Entire industries were dismantled and shipped off to Britain. The British systematically deindustrialized India, ensuring that Indian industries could not compete with British goods. Imagine your favorite local artisan, known for their generations-old craft, suddenly forced out of business because some foreign power decided they could make more money by mass-producing cheap knockoffs. This wasn't just a loss of livelihood, it was a loss of cultural heritage and identity. That's the kind of economic devastation we're talking about. The British policies led to widespread poverty and economic hardship for millions of Indians. The Indian textile industry, once renowned worldwide for its quality and craftsmanship, was systematically undermined by British policies that favored their own textile mills. Indian weavers and artisans found themselves out of work, their skills devalued and their products replaced by inferior British goods. Indian cotton was shipped to Britain, turned into cloth, and then sold back to Indians at inflated prices. This created a cycle of dependency and exploitation that crippled the Indian economy. Talk about adding insult to injury. The very resources that were taken from India were used to flood the Indian market with British goods, making it nearly impossible for local industries to survive. This wasn't just about individual items or industries, it was about the systematic dismantling of an entire economy. The British Empire's policies were designed to keep India economically dependent and subservient. It was grand theft, plain and simple, and its effects are still felt in India today. The legacy of British colonialism is a complex and painful one, with economic disparities and social injustices that continue to impact the country. The struggle for independence was not just a fight for political freedom, but also an effort to reclaim economic autonomy and restore the dignity of a nation that had been systematically stripped of its wealth. Today, India is on a path of economic recovery and growth, but the scars of colonial exploitation are still visible. The resilience and determination of the Indian people continue to drive the nation forward, reclaiming its place on the global stage. The revival of traditional crafts and industries is a testament to the enduring spirit of India. Despite the challenges, the country is working to preserve its rich cultural heritage and build a prosperous future for all its citizens. The new generation of Indians is embracing technology and innovation, creating opportunities for growth and development. They are the torchbearers of a new era, determined to overcome the legacy of colonialism and build a brighter future. From jewels to entire industries, the story of British economic plunder in India is a stark reminder of the impact of colonialism. But it is also a story of resilience, recovery, and the unyielding spirit of a nation that refuses to be defined by its past.